Hi, we are live. Ooh, I didn't like the way I just said hi.
Yeah, well, we're
That was
missing
great.
somebody.
We are missing somebody. We're missing Brandon. First of all, we'll welcome in the show and then we'll explain where Brandon is. Unnecessary Roughness, live week 5 reaction. Thanks to High Noon. We were in Lincoln, Nebraska today, and it was 95 degrees when the show started. And I got to tell you, I had a High Noon cranberry in front of me, and it hit so perfectly because it was just I just took one sip of it and was like, all is well in the world. There were High Noons all over the place. High Noon hard seltzer. You guys know the drill. Go find it. Drizzly, your liquor stores, your convenience stores. Jack, Katie, you guys have been watching games all day. I assume have had some High Noons.
Yeah, the high noons are flowing across the country. I would assume this is, I mean, there's no way to verify this, but I would assume in every state today a high noon was drunk or drank.
Has to be
I'm
100%.
trying to think, like, of course, like maybe this is just me just like being too stereotypical, but like, do you think people in Alaska are putting down High Noons?
That's probably where it would, it's their high noon in Hawaii, at least the continental United States.
I feel like
48 for 48.
Hawaii has to because it's, obviously you're around the ocean. But I don't know. Regardless, I agree with you. The 48 continental states, especially because there's football played in almost every single one of them, I would assume.
Yeah.
Drank.
Yeah, Montana, Wyoming, every single one. I would assume they were flowing, and they were flowing in Lincoln, Nebraska. And shout out High Noon. Visit highnoonspirits.com before your next tailgate to find a pack near you. All right. So yeah,
Brandon's not here. Yeah, Brandon's not here. He's a dead person. So I just got out of the shower, just got back from Chicago, but we flew in to Lincoln this morning to do the show, then went to the game. Luckily for us, the game was so out of control so quickly we were able to leave early. But like I mentioned, this isn't an exaggeration. It was actually 95 degrees. We get back on the plane, go to Chicago. Then I fly from Chicago to New York. I walk in and we get a text that Brandon says he's a dead person because of his migraines, which I could have called that from the man and the son. They have a problem. They have constant beef, and it was so hot today. So he's dead. Hopefully he'll be fine tomorrow, but he's a dead person.
Which I will say does line up perfectly with Mississippi State losing yet again to Alabama right now as we record. It is 34-17. If you are rewatching, not with us live on audio, it is 34-17 Alabama. Will Rogers in this game, just before we went live, threw the first touchdown pass for Mississippi State against Alabama since 2014, Dak Prescott.
That is so bad.
That is brutal. And Mississippi State, at least they put up 17 points. I mean, it was looking bad early. They kind of fought back. But yeah, Brandon, I wish we could have just rolled with the narrative that he was, just not here because Mississippi State broke his heart yet again. But
he was telling Dave today because there was a shirt, some lady, and I think Dave tweeted it out, but there was like a lady wearing like a Nebraska color shirt that said like Saturdays are for like pain and misery or something. And Dave was like, Brandon, you should get one of those in maroon and white. And Brandon like didn't even have like something to say back. He was like, you know what? I wake up on Saturdays when we're playing Alabama and I just know we're going to get our dicks kicked in. He was like, I can't even argue with it today. Like it's like, I'm still in the phase of like, A&M plays Alabama next week. And it's like, I'm going to believe all week that we're going to win because we beat them a couple times when we've been in the SEC. Brandon's just like, no, we're playing Alabama. We're not going to win. Why do I even try to argue about this?
Yeah, no, we'll get back to A&M and Alabama soon, but we do want to start and probably the game of the day. It came down to the wire. LSU Ole Miss. LSU loses. I think the final score was 55-49. Maybe it was 54-49. This game was electric, back and forth. I would say this was Lane Kiffin's first massive win for Ole Miss. Last year, you could say the Kentucky game, some games against Mississippi State. There's some other games littered in there, but this was a big, big win for Lane Kiffin. Jackson Dart, the whole team put together a very great drive at the end of the game to take the lead. And yeah, I want to give credit to Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, Jackson Dart, but I think the story here is yet again, we're not even in October. I know it's September 30th, but Brian Kelly, 2 losses already out of the college football playoff discussion. I think we can, unless there's chaos beyond belief, LSU is out of the playoff discussion, and we do have to say Brandon Walker was right there.
Brandon Walker was right there. He made sure that everybody knew that as well when that game was unfolding while we were flying in. First of all, I think with Ole Miss, this is why when, we talked about Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart, and obviously Jalen Milroe outplayed Jackson Dart last week. So, that narrative died there. But Jackson Dart leading that offense for that last drive down the field, that was textbook. It was beautiful. And it was what Ole Miss fans expect to see from Lane Kiffin. And more often than not, he can't put it all together. And it was almost like when you were watching the end of that drive, it was like they are going to do something for Lane Kiffin to somehow, make a bad play call. They're going to make a mistake, and it's going to be the same old story for Ole Miss. And it was almost like they got over a hump, and Jackson Dart was the leader of that. And so he very much proved that he can be that guy down the stretch. LSU still had time left. I'm sitting here thinking oh my God, this is just going to be just a catastrophe for Ole Miss, but they did it. Why were they throwing stuff on the field? I didn't see that part. Why were they doing that?
So there was one of who's the wide receiver for LSU that caught all the touchdowns? Brian Thomas. He caught a touchdown to make it a 2-score game, or maybe 49-41, and the ball definitely looked like it was not a completion.
Right.
And they kept it as a completion. The ref calling it a completion made sense, but after, it looked like he kind of didn't really have possession. And that's when they started to throw stuff on the field, a la Tennessee Ole Miss a few years ago.
Yeah, the golf ball game, because I saw it we were landing, whatever. Besides, no one needs to know every single second of where I was, but I wasn't watching it live when that happened. And then of course, you're seeing Twitter blow up typical Ole Miss fans. But Jack, I think your point to this is the biggest win for him. These are the games that Ole Miss wants to see Lane Kiffin win. I mean, every school wants to see him win, but that the offense that we saw down the stretch and how much fun that game was back and forth and just a true SEC battle with a million points. Ole Miss had 700 yards of offense.
I mean,
how is that possible?
Looking at this box score, it's insane.
700 yards.
Jackson Dart was very, very, very good.
Yes.
26 of 39, 4 touchdowns. He also ran for 50 yards, another touchdown. Quinshon Jenkins ran for 177 yards. He also had a touchdown. Also Jackson Dart, I don't think he had a fumble or anything. He had no interceptions. It was definitely Jackson Dart's best game for Ole Miss, and it was in a big spot after a tough game last week. But man, that LSU defense, we weren't expecting them to be the best in the country or world beaters, but geez.
Yeah, no,
700 yards is
insane.
I titled this, and this is the question. This is my biggest takeaway from Saturday. Should LSU fans be concerned about Brian Kelly?
Yes.
I don't know. Yes? Okay, that's what I wanted to ask you.
Yes, we in the way that things work now, we've seen first-year coaches when they go to new programs, and we bring up Sonny Dykes all the time. You're able to have success right away with the transfer portal, with NIL. I do think that it's not completely fair sometimes for guys to go in and be like, okay, you better start winning right now. But Brian Kelly is not. Brian Kelly is somebody who had so much success at Notre Dame. Now, obviously, when they got to the big dance, they were failing, but he is a guy that goes to a school like LSU with all the money they have, all the recruits, all the talent, everything already there. And he is expected to win right away because he's not a guy that's making a leap from G5 or kind of an unknown name. And this is Brian Kelly, who spent a million years at Notre Dame. And it is October 1st when this is going out, or, it'll be October 1st when we're still recording. And they already have 2 losses. And no matter, even if they win the SEC West, it does not matter because they're not going to the college football playoff. I honestly do not think there's a scenario in the world that I could come up with that a 2-loss SEC, even if they beat Georgia or whoever you want to pick goes I can't find a world that would happen with only 4 teams.
Theoretically, they could win out and beat Georgia, which would mean they would have a win over Missouri, Auburn, which I mean, whatever, at Alabama, against Georgia, versus Florida, versus Texas A&M. And then their loss would be against Florida State, which does look like they will be in the playoff. It's so slim because not only does a lot of things have to break your way, you have to win all those games. And let's be honest, I don't like them going into Alabama right now. I'll be honest, next week they're going to Missouri.
Yeah, not easy.
How are we supposed to feel about that game? I'll be honest. I mean, Brian Kelly could go 7-5 in his second season at LSU. And if you said on the day when he signed that contract, hey, he will be 7-5 in his second year at LSU, I don't think a lot of people would sign up for that.
It's also so tough. Like once you have your second loss, how do you keep the locker room together? That's I think the biggest indicator.
Like, yeah, and they've had some weird, like last year, and Brandon points it out a lot when we talk about LSU being good. I mean, LSU losing to A&M the way that they did at the end of last season was abysmal. Not just because A&M was so bad, but LSU didn't look like they wanted to be there. The players looked like they had quit, and they still technically had playoff chances on the line. Obviously, that would be assuming they were going to beat Georgia, but that wasn't going to happen. But when you look at the two losses, you also have to take in years past when it's like, okay, well, maybe a 2-loss Big Ten or 2-loss SEC team could get in. The Pac-12 wasn't what the Pac-12 looked like. Texas wasn't as good as Texas was. The ACC wasn't wide open. So it was like, beforehand, if Clemson lost, it was like, okay, well, the ACC is just going to kind of be out there, like, maybe leaving a spot for a 2-loss SEC team, depending on what happens. That's not the case this year. There's not a weak conference when you could say, okay, then maybe a 2-loss team could make it. Also, they're not beating Georgia. I don't think they're beating Georgia in the SEC championship. And I don't care what Georgia did today. I understand it looked messy, and I understand they kind of slept walk, and Auburn's not great. Like, Georgia is still the favorite in the East, and I think that I would take them over LSU in a heartbeat. So there's not even a reason to talk about that, in my opinion.
I'll push back on the Georgia sleptwalk. We've seen them sleepwalk a few times. Is it sleepwalking, or is this kind of who they are? Because I think we've hit enough points that they've had the really bad games. They've had the first half, second half, turn on, turn off. They had to fight to the wire, and they couldn't pull it back. Is this just Georgia's talent level this year? More hypothetical than what I believe personally, but is this still sleepwalking?
Jack, what do you think? I mean, my inclination is to say yes, it's sleepwalking, just because I know how talented this team is. But I mean, you're right, Katie. It's like if they keep rolling the same thing out every single week, but I just know how good they are. They're so fucking good.
Yeah, I'm torn.
Yeah, I'm still a big-time believer in Georgia. You have to go through growing pains, as any team does, especially with a younger quarterback. I mean, Carson Beck really isn't that young. They did what they had to do today. Should have gone better, yes, 100%. You're right, Katie. We'll have to see. That it's a perfect transition to that game where Hugh Freeze did have a much better performance in this one than he's had against last week against Texas A&M. Auburn's environment, Jordan Hare was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Kirby, the first thing when they asked him about the game, that was the first thing that he said. Very respectful of that environment. Jordan Hare, it always shows up for big games. Their fan base was rejuvenized, and that being said, they didn't. Hugh Freeze needs that big-time quarterback, and Peyton Thorne isn't it.
Right.
But they did fight, and Georgia, you're 100%, Katie. Prior to 2 weeks ago, I had less questions about Georgia than I do now, because we had the game against South Carolina, now this one, and I do think you can spin zone and say, hey, this is great for Georgia because you want to be in tough games. That's where you learn. They're going to have harder games down the schedule. But the other side of that coin is, if you're in hard games against Auburn and South Carolina, what's it going to be against Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama? Or let's say you get through those, then you get to the other side of the country.
And we saw with Michigan, I think we're all like, they're going to be slow out the gate, slow out the gate, slow out the gate. They turned that around today, and they're like, this is not, they woke up, they stopped sleepwalking. So
Nebraska is so bad. Yeah. They are so bad. We'll talk about that. what surprised me with Auburn today, and I mean, we talked about this on the show this morning, and I stupidly took Auburn's team total under, which was like 13.5. I was like, I'm taking that all day as my like lock of the week, because the two Power 5 schools they've played, A&M and Cal, they scored 14 points and 10 points. And you can make the argument pretty easily that of those three schools, Georgia has the best defense. So to me, it was an absolute no-brainer that even if Georgia's offense started slow, even if Carson Beck didn't like come right out of the gates, and I mean, and obviously Brock Bowers had, a Brock Bowers type game as well, but it was like, there's no way this team's gonna be able to score. I mean, do you know how many yards Peyton Thorne had? I just looked this up. He had 82 yards. That offense, like that, I mean, the fact that game was ended 27-20 is crazy, because Hugh Freeze is an offensive guy. We know that. He needs to get his quarterback in. Their quarterback had 82 yards. Like, what is Georgia doing?
Brandon called it out. He's like, yeah, go ahead, Jack.
That goes to show the rush defense is not as good as it once was, or at least maybe last year's and whatnot. But that does go to show that the underlying numbers are pretty good for Georgia. Like, if you just looked at everything and predicted the score, you wouldn't have said 27-20.
Right.
Now, that being said, it was. And Georgia did have to make big time plays and I mean, Brock Bowers is unbelievable.
He's so good.
I mean, it's just, he's unbelievable. Carson, I think he's not the guy who's going to win you the games, at least right now, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be the one that loses them. He doesn't. I mean,
no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I mean, he was 23 of 33 with 313 yards. I mean, that's a good day for him.
Yeah, and he threw one interception, but a lot of it's not like there's a lot of drop. I may be wrong. I have to look up the stats, but it doesn't seem like he's throwing a lot of interceptable passes. There were some plays early in the game that he missed some wide open guys, not wide open, but were open. But then again, this is his first year as a starter. That was his first true road game, or I think even a road game in general, right?
Yeah, they haven't played outside of Athens until today.
Yeah. So, and that was a tough environment. So that's how I would spin it for Georgia. But yeah, I mean, there's some concerns. I think last year's team was better.
I think, yeah. And I mean, and Stetson Bennett, for all the shit that everybody gave him, I mean, Stetson Bennett, like you knew what you were going to get from him. And obviously it worked out. So Katie, you brought up Michigan. So I was having this internal conversation in my head about, when we do our top 10s tomorrow, Monday, before Monday show, whatever, where I'm going to rank everybody, because, I think anytime we go to these schools, like, you kind of get swayed by the crowd. Like before the show, I was like, I'm obviously going to take Michigan to cover the points, even though it was 18. I was like, I really believe this. But then I'm there and I'm like, 18's a lot. We had, I don't know if you guys saw the pictures. The crowd was gigantic. It was massive. And I was like, okay, I'm swayed. And I really thought that it was going to at least be close for like a half. And obviously it wasn't. It was an absolute bloodbath. But like, do you look at Michigan and what they did and just the absolute ass kicking that they put on Nebraska and say, okay, they did this in conference team. And then you look at what Georgia did, and do you say, okay, do you rank Michigan higher than Georgia? I don't think I'm going to, but I do understand where that argument could come from.
I wonder how much the Bus and Bowl affected, like, Barstool's opinion of this game. I feel like we almost got
100%.
We got too hyped about it. It was 18-point spread. I feel like I would have put that like closer to 28. But I think it's more of a Nebraska, oh boy, than a Michigan, like, congratulations. It's more like Michigan played their A game. They played well, did the job. I think it's a bigger testament to Nebraska, just nothing bad.
No, I would say I see your point of view, but I would say that was a really, 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 really impressive game by Michigan. Going on the road in conference play in general is always tough. Nebraska is a tough place to play. And I wouldn't say Nebraska is very good at all, but Michigan went in there. JJ McCarthy had one of his best games as a Michigan Wolverine. He was running the ball. He was passing the ball. I think Michigan, and it was definitely one of the – it's tough. I saw a comment in the chat before we started tonight that said no team deserves to be number one right now, which I kind of agree with. Like, let's just put everybody like tied at number two. And then number one is it's almost as if there's a title and it's like MMA, UFC, and the title was relinquished by somebody and there's no champion right now and it's all just contenders. That's what I feel like we're at in college football. But I would say, I mean, Michigan you looked around, and this may be because Ohio State didn't play this week, but the biggest game of the season, somebody asked me the other day, oh, do you think the USC Colorado game would be the most viewed game of the season? I was going through my mind, biggest games of the season left, and I said SEC championship, whatnot, but that's technically not regular season, kind of is. And I said, I mean, I think without a doubt, the number one watched game this year will be Ohio State, Michigan, because that really could be number one versus number two, especially seeing how things play out in the rest of this country. But Michigan, I would say, is dangerous, and it's a shame Brandon's not here. We'll have to talk on Monday. JJ McCarthy looked dynamite.
He did. He looked so good. And you're right, Jack, on the road in conference play, that's going to be tough. I mean, Penn State struggled a little bit today. I mean, they ended up killing Northwestern at the end of the game, but it's very, very clear that when you're in conference play, it's any given Saturday, as cliche as that is. But JJ McCarthy handled it. And I'm saving something for the shit list, but it was quiet in that stadium. And I understand that Nebraska, they know how bad they are. I mean, they do. Right. They know how bad they are. But it was, I feel like the people we were sitting in like the 200s level, and I feel like the people on the other side of the stadium could hear Dave clapping because it was that quiet. Like he was going bananas as he should. But it was just like Michigan could do anything they wanted. And
I'm sorry that I was laughing during there's this hilarious video of this security guard at the Ole Miss game. The students rushed the field. Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to yell about it. But this guy was just trying to stop people from going. The field was already stormed. And it's very funny. I think we're about to tweet it out from.
He was trying to physically stop them.
It's very once it's tweeted out. You know what? I'll just show it on.
Yeah, show it here.
I'm gonna put
That's just a man who takes his job too seriously, dude.
Oh no!
No! Oh no! Oh, that makes me sad.
He kind of he stiff armed a girl, which is
Did you just deck that girl?
I mean,
yeah. Whoa!
In his defense, his job is to try to stop field storming.
But that's where you got to throw your hands up and just be like, all right, man. Like that was like what he just did is like the Jon Snow gif from Game of Thrones where he's like taking out the sword. Also, you can't deck a girl. Can't be doing that.
Well, I mean, if a girl ran on the field, she would get tackled.
But not storming, like as a speaker. Or
you are right. In this situation, the guy should have. It was over. He should have just let people.
They're like you've already let the floodgates open, man. Just you got to step back. But that guy in his head thought he was really doing something too.
Yeah.
Damn.
Brandon's gonna have some comment about that, because it's an Ole Miss security guard.
If Brandon is alive, please, we'll see how he feels tomorrow. But no, Jack. I mean, didn't you pick Michigan to win the national title? Am I crazy?
No, I picked Clemson. You remember everyone made fun of me.
You picked Michigan, Katie.
I think I did. I flip flopped. I've been more confident in my Final Four than my national. Yeah, I did pick Michigan.
Yeah, I knew somebody on the podcast did, and it wasn't me, and it was obviously not Brandon. So,
I mean, Michigan. Yeah, their next game. What? I wanted to pull up their schedule to see when
Speaking of schedules, and I know he's a talker and we all say stupid shit and we have to do it. Urban Meyer talking about their schedule again today and being like, they're going to be tested.
I think I'm going to be honest. I think he loves the thrill of coaching, but right now, how does he measure being a good media analyst? It's getting talked about. That's true. And I think he saw how much it was. And that's what, but I know you're completely right. But also I can't blame him. I think he still hates Michigan, and I think he looks at Michigan and says, I could beat them right now. Cause that's who he is as a person.
For sure. But it's just so funny. Cause I think 2 weeks ago, he was talking about how Michigan and Georgia should both be penalized, or it was before Ohio State played Notre Dame, because he was like, this is what they do this for the fans. They do this for the people. And then today he's talking about, oh, that's going to be close. They're, because Nebraska is the first real test. No, sir. No, sir. But I'm interested to see. The bigger question for Nebraska, though, is like, how long do they give Matt Rule to turn it around? And obviously that program's been down for a long time. So it's not like they're not like in a Brian Kelly situation, but like it wasn't expected to be rebuilt overnight, but it's definitely supposed to look better than it does right now.
I think if you look back at Matt Rule's history, at least I feel like talking heads were more, he's a year 2 guy. Every place he's been, year 1 is like 1 or 2 wins. That's it. Year 2 is where stuff turns around. I think his year 2 leash got shorter, but I think at least, and from my point of view, there's a precedent of year 1 being garbage enough. So like, will Nebraska take that? You have Dion, you have Sonny Dykes, first year head coaches. Obviously Dion's Dion, but
these are good questions, but I would say like he could lose every game by 100. There would have to be a scandal for him to get fired, I think.
100%.
Oh, he's not getting fired, but that as excited as they were, and I mean, it was like, before Luke Fickell got hired at Wisconsin, it was like, oh my God, this is one of the best hires of the offseason. And they look like shit. I mean, just point blank, they look like shit. So they're not even, it's like, I have a shit list, so I'll save it. So Jack, what game do you want to go to next? Do you want to talk about Dion, Colorado?
I do want to just wrap up Matt Rule. The thing is, they are 2-2. They haven't made a bowl game in 5 to 6 years, I think.
It's been a while.
They're at Illinois next week, which will be a tough game. Northwestern, Purdue, at Michigan State, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa. I think there's a chance he makes a bowl game, and we kind of look back on the season as, all right, decent year 1. We need to step up in year 2.
Well, and Michigan is really, really good. So it's not, a testament of like Nebraska is that bad. Now they are really bad, but Michigan doing what they did to them today is not surprising. Michigan, I mean, I agree with you, Katie. I thought the line should be higher than 18.
Yeah, it's like the Notre Dame Navy. Like, you don't really know. Well, now we know how bad Nebraska is, but I think they do what they need to do, get out of there. But I think like with a good, formidable, solid like win, like a statement win. Sorry, that's the term I'm looking for. Statement win.
Yeah, and I think he'll have some. I think his goal for the rest of this season is to make a bowl game, and that's something Nebraska hasn't done. And once they do, their fans, if they want to get to the bowl game, how would they get there? They would probably use a car, and cars.com is here to help. Casey, we know all about cars.com. They've been here with us, I think, the entire season.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 million cars on this website right now. 2 million. And there's probably a bunch. It changes each day because cars get bought, cars get taken off, new cars get put on. But cars.com is your place to get a car.
Yeah, when we were doing those social ads the other day and Katie was like showing me like the website, because I've looked at it on my phone, but I've never seen it on a laptop. It is crazy the amount of things you can filter through for your car. I mean, you can filter every single detail. And I remember like when I went shopping for like the first car I ever bought myself, like my first grown-up car, and just like how picky I would be about things. And I'm going to lots and then I'm leaving. You don't have to do any of that. You can do it just sitting on the couch. You can be watching football, sitting on the couch, and you can filter out whatever you want, what you don't want. It's amazing. We love cars.com.
2 million cars for 2 million possibilities. Find your next possibility on cars.com. Where to next?
Jack, I just now realized you're wearing a MILF shirt.
Well, it says, man, I love Fordham.
It's great.
Fordham
love a good MILF.
Yeah, man, I love Fordham. As I was doing the ad, I kind of realized it only says MILF on my little box. But then I was like, all right, I need to show off that it's like I'm not like a freak. Speaking of another Big Ten team that had a little bit of struggle, Penn State, they did take care of business though. 41-13. James Franklin is the biggest asshole in the fucking world. I had Northwestern plus 26.5. I want the backup quarterback on Northwestern investigated for what happened at the end of that game.
I saw you tweeting about it, and I could hear it in your tone.
I was like, they were covering the whole game, and there was a lot of people even they were tweeting us. They were like, "Oh, you still think Drew Aller's good?" And then he won 41-13. But neither here nor there. We don't need to spend too much time on Northwestern. Let's go back to the SEC. Texas A&M took care of business today. It wasn't pretty at all times.
Well, no, but that game never is.
Yes, but I will say, Max Johnson had some moments. He had some bad moments, some turnover moments, but he did enough to win. And the defense is just, I think, really spectacular. And man, the way this is playing out, Texas A&M against Alabama is going to be a massive, massive game. And it's not like, oh, wow, Texas A&M and Alabama kind of have this little beef back and forth. It's always close. No, it may be for who goes to Atlanta.
And I was thinking about that today. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, like anytime that A&M plays Alabama, I convince myself it's going to be great because I'm living off of 2012 still. But there's a real possibility because of the way the rest of the SEC West looks like right now, that A&M could be there. Now, I'm not going to let myself get too high on that. I can't inject myself with that hope because I know what happens. But watching the way that they played today against Arkansas, and like you said, Jack, it wasn't pretty, but the biggest booster of confidence that I got was that Max Johnson, at the very beginning of the game, went out there and threw that perfect dime. Like, it was gorgeous. And it was like, okay.
He threw, I think at the one you're talking about, the one I'm thinking of, he threw a pass that I was like, oh, that's when I tweeted it, and you retweeted it when I said I'm all in on Max Johnson, and like, and
it was right off the bat. It was right off the bat too. So it's like you get this, and when Connor Wigman gets hurt, you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? Like, what are we going to do? Max Johnson again. Arkansas is not fantastic. We need to talk about you want to talk about a fan base that's out on their coach.
Oh my
God, that
God.
fan base hates Sam Pittman now. Hates him.
There was a point where KJ Jefferson had 2 passes, and I think it was late in the game. Yeah, there was. I'm not going to say that it's a negative to Texas A&M, but it did feel like Arkansas should have been more in. Like, they had a lot of opportunities to take control of that game, and they didn't. And yeah, Arkansas fans, they're probably in this tough spot. They're in a better spot than they were in with Chad Morris. But Katie, what do you think? What would you I don't know. I mean, I'm not an Arkansas fan, and I know we've had our beef with them, but just from the perspective of I can feel for them 100%, because when you think you have the guy, it's like when you think you have a girlfriend and you think she's great, and then you realize 3 months in, oh my God, I don't like this person. And you're like, what the fuck?
I think it's hard. It's like, what is the standard for Arkansas? Like when Michigan State, when they had the up year and then like the 2 and whatever, where's the baseline? Eventually it's going to even out. And for every really good season, you have a bad one. So like, I haven't followed college football long enough to know, like,
the Arkansas standard for, I would look it up.
Bowl game. It's like bowl game and make it.
No, I think it's more than that for Arkansas.
That's the vibe.
But it's been a long time since that's happened.
But I will say, and this is something that we got into, I think during preseason, we're not that far off from when Arkansas was in the SEC with Bobby Petrino and Brett Bielema at first, when they were making BCS games. They were at the top of their division. Now, that was before Nick Saban really took over, and then Kirby Smart and whatnot. But Arkansas expects 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. I'm not saying they expect to be 12-0. They don't expect national championships, but they do expect a little bit more than just 6-6.
Yeah, like I'm looking at 7 wins, 9 wins, 3, 2, 2, 4, 7, 8, 7, like a 3, 4.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, so at least like in recent history, because I always feel like it's the reset. It's like, what is the baseline? No fan base is reasonable with that expectation. That's why I feel like over the past 10 years, it averages out to like successful bowl game. Maybe I'm setting myself up the Arkansas, like, they
But
need to be reasonable. What, I don't know their resources.
yeah, I mean, I would take a look at just they've been a very successful program. Uh they don't really miss bowl games that often, but it's probably in between what you and I are saying. It's
It
like,
is.
and that's
It's
so
from somebody that's watched Arkansas my whole life, and I'm older than you guys. There's high expectations because they have had a lot of success. The problem is that the program has been so down for the last 10 years that
mhm.
it's like the glimmer of hope that Sam Pittman gave them, like, reminded those fans. Like, it's not been like a situation where it's been like 40 or 50 years, like these fans still remember what it looks like to be a good football team, to be a good football program. And so Sam Pittman gives them that hope. And last year, I mean, you, like you said, Jack, when we go back and forth with Arkansas fans, this game after the A&M Arkansas game is when I got into it like crazy with Arkansas fans, because they were still so high on Sam Pittman and so high on KJ Jefferson and this whole team. I mean, I know that the tweet went viral of the guy that's Snapchatting talking about firing Sam Pittman. That's the way they all feel. And they're like verbal about it, because Arkansas fans, they don't hold back. I mean, they don't give a shit. They're going to say what they want. And you've got, like, by the way, the fact that I don't know how old that guy was, but that he was Snapchat messaging was funny enough to me.
Yeah, the
Like,
fact that guy was on Snapchat, I was like, wait, what?
If you're out of college, you should not be using Snapchat.
Yeah, it was a little sus, the man. But of course, like, he just like fire his fat ass, whatever. But like, now you look at the SEC West, and we're still trying to figure out what the top of it looks like, who is at the top, and those kind of like every week it's kind of like shuffling through what you think. The bottom is Mississippi State and Arkansas.
Yeah, especially after Auburn today.
I would have put Auburn there, but Auburn putting up a fight against Georgia, I'd put them a little bit higher. But when I tweeted about the SEC West earlier, and I had Arkansas fans being like, I'm an Arkansas fan. Arkansas is the worst team in the SEC West. And I was like, okay,
it's
here we
always
go.
tough to see, like, did Auburn play up? Did Georgia play down? I think it's a little combination. Like, you just never know the moment. You have to see the season. You're only going to know looking back at everything. If someone won the game, lost the game, or if, like, that's Auburn's true self and they can compete with that, or if is just Georgia not where we thought they were.
Now we'll stay in the SEC and go to Florida, Kentucky. Kentucky, huge win. Billy Napier yet again failing on the road. Not the best look. Florida fans have had such an up and down season.
Oh my God.
I think there's some really great moments, and then there's been some tough moments today. And I would be remiss to not mention Ray Davis. He had 200 yards by the end of the first quarter, I think it was. He finished with 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kentucky, Devin Leary he only threw for 69 yards, but
crazy.
Threw a touchdown, and they put together, and the defense looked good. And Kentucky we have these moments a lot with Kentucky. We've had them, and that's really good, and that goes to show the program that is built over there right now. Next week they do have a game at Georgia at night. That's going to be a marquee game, and as a Kentucky fan, that's all you can really ask for. When you play Georgia, do you feel as if it's a marquee game? And they have a chance to go in next week and have the biggest win of the college football season so far.
Florida fans too, like, when going into this game and I totally agree, Jack, that sometimes, like, we go up and down with Kentucky, and I know Brandon had his whole thing with Kentucky. I almost forget every single year, like, how, like, poorly I judged Kentucky the year before. And that's the way that I felt going into this, because Florida fans, like, they've been in my mentions because I talked about Billy Napier. But what I noticed today was that Kentucky fans have such like a confidence about them that, like, they're not even really talking shit. They're just like, no, we know this team is good. And I saw some Florida fans like, please keep Billy Napier forever. Like, that's always a bad sign. When you've got your opposing fan bases like begging to keep your coach, like that is never a good sign. But like Kentucky I mean, we've seen Georgia look, they're not untouchable. They've won, but they've had some close games. Like if Kentucky puts together a game like they did today, and obviously Georgia's much better than Florida, like, is it going to surprise you if it's a close game? Absolutely not, because Georgia is reachable this year, and Kentucky look pretty damn good.
They look great. I'm excited for next week. That's great. Georgia's schedule looks a lot more difficult than we initially thought, which I think is great for the sport. Missouri took down Vandy, took care of business. They have a big game next week against LSU, and if they can keep the gravy train running, that would be great for Mizzou. They're good. I think we're all in agreement there. And then, man, Tennessee took it to South Carolina. This was a revenge game for them. They really took it to South Carolina. Spencer Rattler had just a brutal pick six.
I've officially put down the Spencer Rattler drug. Just want everyone to know. It's been a while. It's taken a bit, okay?
It's just
First step is admitting it.
His offensive line is brutal. He finished the game with 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. I tweeted out at halftime that I wanted Spencer Rattler in jail for the pick six that he threw. And South Carolina fans came out in droves at me. They were not happy with me. They said I didn't know ball, this, that, the other. I felt like I was getting gaslit, but they lose, they don't cover, and then they have yet to be over 500 at any point of this season yet, and that was one of my predictions for the season. I've had a lot of things wrong this year, but that is one that I will hang my hat on if it continues this way.
Yeah, no, it was tough. It was tough. And, Joe Milton has been catching a lot of shit, and I'm still not sure exactly where I stand on him, but they took care of business. I don't think that Tennessee is fantastic. I still think that the East is Georgia's and everybody. I mean, like, we just said, though, all these games and the SEC as a whole is so intriguing. And not just because it's like, okay, well, it's Georgia and everybody else. It's because you really don't know who to put next after Georgia. And these games are so close. And it's like, could it be Tennessee? Could it be Kentucky? We'll see. But South Carolina, man, Shane Beamer at halftime when they played Georgia, and he said, oh, we're whatever he said, like, we're taking it to him or whatever, killed him. Like, that was just a bad omen. They look like shit.
That's a good point. Since he said that, it's not gone great. It's not gone great for them.
Tried to have his viral moment, which to his credit, it did go viral against the 2-time defending national champions and talking shit on a microphone. The wheels have completely come off. And South Carolina fans multiple weeks ago were telling us, oh, you put some respect on our name. Like, guys, I've been smoking the Spencer Rattler crack for a long time. He's just we just got to move on from it. We've got to move on from it. Tennessee looked a lot better today than they did last week.
The defense looked good too.
Yeah.
Credit to Tennessee, bounce back after the tough Florida loss, and you keep it moving for Tennessee. They'll have big games the remainder of the season. Brew McCoy
is Joe Milton out? Like, how long is he out?
So Joe Milton played, but he was banged up, and then I would assume he'll be playing for the remainder of the season. But tonight,
do we know how bad it is?
No, but coming into tonight, there was some discussion he may not play, and he definitely did. I don't really even know what's wrong. I think it's knee or something.
Okay. I mean that obviously is going to play a factor into it, but I want to go see.
He had 2 tough interceptions tonight, but I mean, hopefully he learns from those and keeps it moving. But Tennessee, they took care of business tonight. They took revenge from last year's last year was brutal. But South Carolina fans may have some apologizing to do.
Did this help your image of Tennessee after the Florida loss? Is this okay.
100%.
Yes.
I would say they did what they had to do at home, won by 3 touchdowns against an inferior team. They did what they had to do. And I think we only get so many data points of a team in a college football season. You got to take what you get, and that's one of them. And when you take care of business at home, it's like, all right, you check that box. So I mean, that's a good win. That's a really good win. At least in my
a great
opinion.
win.
I do want to say we are at the 45-minute mark. Do you realize what we haven't done?
We haven't talked about Colorado. I tried to sneak it in early. I tried to sneak it in
Hey,
earlier.
Chat, 45 minutes. We didn't say Dion once. All right. Shout out Casey too, because you guys get on her for saying Dion this, Dion that. Maybe we said Colorado once, but we didn't say Dion. But we should. We're gonna go to the Pac-12. I will say that was, I don't know, Casey. I think you were live when the comeback was happening.
So shout out again. Like, I'm going to talk some shit about Nebraska's the football team, but where we were in like downtown Lincoln, we were about like, it was like a 10-minute walk to the stadium, but like directly facing us, there was a gigantic TV board. Like, it was huge. It was like a scoreboard just like in downtown. And so and on it was Colorado USC. So we could watch it while we were live, which was fantastic, but it was crazy. And I know, Jack, I'm assuming you tweeted it. This USC defense is about to be pounded by Oregon and Washington. Holy shit.
I think
that you,
was
Katie?
you, Katie, right? Yeah. It was
sorry, Katie. I should have given you credit. My apologies.
More crimes are coming against them.
It is going to be so bad.
I will say, we don't need to spend too much time, but there is something to say for Colorado that they could have just given up, poo-pooed, pouted on the sidelines. They came back and they fought. And Shadur just is, he's a gamer, man. And there's a lot to credit. And so they have some young guys. They brought in some young guys throughout that game that, I mean, it was hilarious, though. USC was putting on, Caleb Williams was putting on a show and whatnot, but it just seemed as if Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson just couldn't stop talking about how great Dion, like keeping the guys in it was. Now I get it. They were trying to keep people on the broadcast or whatnot, but Colorado does have some young guns, and we knew that, and we never said that they didn't. Amarion Miller was, I believe he's a freshman, 7 receptions, 196 yards, 1 touchdown. Jimmy Horn, who I do think is a little bit older, but Cormani McLean came in. He, for the first time, Dion's been really hard on him. He's a freshman. He's 18. Hopefully he continues to figure it out. But yeah, man.
This is going to surprise everybody. I want to talk about USC more than I want to talk about Colorado, because again, Colorado is a few years, we'll see when they can get guys on the offensive and defensive line. How in the world is it fair to Caleb Williams, who had 6 touchdowns today, like over 400 yards, to have the defense that they keep rolling out? And I know it's not a new Lincoln Riley problem. I know he's been doing this. Like, what is Alex Grinch doing that he continues to keep these jobs? Because this Colorado offense is very good. We know that. We've seen it throughout the season. But the fact that game ended with a touchdown difference when Caleb Williams had 6 touchdowns is absurd. It shouldn't be allowed. Caleb Williams deserves better.
Yeah, I'm concerned for USC. They're going to be up against some killers soon. And today, there was a point where I was looking around and said, all right, this USC defense is pretty good and whatnot. But Washington's taking care of business right now. It's 28-10, 6 minutes left in the third. Now, Arizona could come back, but looks like Washington's taking care of business. Last night, Oregon State took down Utah in a big win. Mm-hmm. Utah, that's one of the undefeateds in the Pac-12 to go down. And now we'll see if there will be some other cannibalization. But Oregon State, big win. DJ Uiagalelei was pretty good, but the defense was dominant. Utah really misses Cam Rising.
Yeah, they do.
They really do. And Oregon took care of business, 42-6. Arizona State and California played. Not that anybody really cares about that.
In a game no one cared about.
Yeah, Cal did win. Shout out to the Cal Bears. Yay. Now, Big 12 featured a game that a lot of folks want us to talk about.
Texas?
No. Oklahoma fans want us to discuss. Also, TCU did lose to West Virginia, which is just brutal. But
Neil Brown has he's gone from like saving his job to kind of like a, oh shit, we have to pay attention to West Virginia.
Correct.
Great. I thought I picked West Virginia outside of Oklahoma State as one of my worst teams in the Big 12 coming into the year, and they've really impressed. 2 good wins on the road.
I had him fired. I mean, I legitimately thought he would be fired today. Like, I mean, or yesterday, September the 30th. Like, I was like, no chance he makes it out of September.
Oklahoma 50, Iowa State 20. Very good win for Oklahoma. Both Oklahoma and Texas took care of business today before their big game next weekend, which I think
That game's
is
gonna be awesome.
And you could look ahead in those situations, especially as a young football player. You could definitely look ahead. They took care of business. Oklahoma, the defense really showed up after allowing some early points. I think they're good, man. We'll see next week. Brandon, this is another thing I want. We'll have to talk about. We'll talk with Brandon during the week. But, man, I think this is – and I got on Brent Venables a lot, but this is – they've taken – now, the test is next week. But they've taken a step forward, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, this is another thing, you know, and for those people who are in the chat, I'm not reading it, so I don't know if Katie, you've been updating, but if people are joining, like where Brandon is dead. He could not handle the quite literally could not handle the heat in Lincoln. But I would be very curious to hear what he has to say. Now we know that Iowa State is not good. That's not some sort of shocking development. However, if you are not a good team, like he thinks Oklahoma is not a good team, you don't go out and win by 30 points in a conference game. You don't put up 50 points. Dylan Gabriel had 5 touchdowns? Like that is a good football team. Now we'll see how good they are when they play Texas, who we all believe is the cream of the crop of the Big 12, as we should, because they haven't proven otherwise. They go out and beat Alabama the way they did. Quinn Ewers looks the way he does. But if I'm going to say this to Brandon when we stream on Monday, what makes them not a good football team? If beating a conference team by 30 points and your quarterback throws 5 touchdowns and it was a look-ahead spot to the one of the biggest rivalries in the sport, what makes them not good? Like what else do you need to see?
I agree with you. Iowa State's not very good. That's for sure. But I do agree with you that, I mean, the spread in this game was 19.5. And I know not everyone gambles and whatnot, but it is a good way to look at kind of how money respects both teams and how far they think they're apart. And Oklahoma ran through that spread. And that's tough loss for me with UCF. They were outscored by 26 points in the fourth quarter to lose 36-35. It was 35-10 at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and they lost. This is such a Gus Bus loss, man. This is such a Gus Malzahn loss. Auburn fans are probably just had a nice little chuckle when I said that, because this is Gus Malzahn. I'm not saying he's a bad coach or a bad program leader, but he has some moments you look around and you're like, this ain't gonna work.
No. And to give up a lead like that to a shitty team that's demoralizing.
I think the first head coach in the Big 12 fired. It's a race between Mike Gundy and Dana Holgorsen, because Houston, again, they lost by 21 to Texas Tech. Great win, Texas Tech. You need to get in that W column. But Houston has been such a disappointment. They are now 2-3. I believe they are defeated in the Big 12. And next week, they go to West Virginia, or they're at home against West Virginia, which may not be easy for them. This Dana Holgorsen's first year in the Big 12. I know it's not his first year overall. He was at West Virginia. But Dana and UH, we'll see. But his seat is hot. It is.
What happened to him? What? When he was at West Virginia, he was Dana was a guy you had to worry about.
No, he always had, even in the AAC, some of these moments where he had games you looked around and you were like, what? Really? And now he's doing it again, and it's not good. Katie?
I think 2 years ago, it was a year after Cincinnati made the playoffs, people were picking Houston to be the next Cincinnati. They're like,
100%.
they're the G5 team. They're this, they're that. How much of a leash is he gonna get with it being the first year in Power 5 versus kind of his history? Like, are people gonna judge him? Obviously, he's gonna be compared, I think, like to BYU, Cincinnati, UCF. Like, how much does this give him an extra leash, or is he held to the same standard of like, we're
Here's
making
the
a leap,
thing.
you gotta leap with us?
I even think over the past decade, Houston, their boosters, their decision makers held themselves in a way that said, no, we should be beating Texas Tech every year.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to being in Texas and whatnot. So it's not even like, oh, we're the like little small school. Like, that's not Houston. That's not their decision makers. That's not their boosters. Losing the Texas Tech like that is very embarrassing.
The
Because
problem with Houston, the NIL stuff is going to be tough for them just because like it's a gigantic school, but it's also like it's one of those schools that everybody like commutes into. Like it's not like, you're not, it's not like the University of Texas. It's not like A&M. It's not like where everything is about it. But you're right, Jack. The boosters there and the money that comes into that school, like this is like they have much higher standards.
Houston is, and I mean, not to say that's the only school in the area with like obviously Houston's probably a melting pot of a lot of alumni of every Texas school and even some other SEC schools and whatnot. But Houston prides themselves as kind of, and now they're in the Power 5, but they were the ones that always wanted to be in the Power 5. We were better than some of the Texas schools in the Power 5. Why not us? And I think a lot of the people that are boosters top tier of Houston kind of look at Texas Tech or a Baylor as kind of like, ugh. Like it's kind of like, like you go to Texas Tech if you're not really like a smart, I'm not saying that about Texas Tech. I'm saying from the perspective of Houston. And that's why this loss is really tough, because it's not like they're like Cincinnati coming in for the first time. They're like, all right, it's the first year. No, this was supposed to be, and they've been talking a big game for a while. So really disappointing. But I'll tell you what is not disappointing.
Oh, tell me what's not disappointing.
That is Shady Rays and the promo code that we are going to give you. But Shady Rays, first time they are here with us on Unnecessary
Shady
Roughness.
Rays.
Welcome, Shady Rays. We love you. Gear up for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Hey, I'm not a doctor or whatnot, but maybe Brandon, if he was wearing some Shady Rays today, you never know. It's like we should be open to trying things.
He might be here if he was wearing Shady Rays. No, I love Shady Rays. I don't remember. I think that they sponsored another podcast. I think like Kelly Keegs or something. I don't know. She gave me one of the pairs of Shady Rays that she got last year. And I love them because they look really expensive. They're really well made. So you're not like going to like a gas station and getting like a crappy, pair of sunglasses. So they look great. They feel great, but they're not super expensive because I lose sunglasses like a crazy person. Like I leave them sitting on on the table at the bar, or I throw them in my purse, they get broken. So Shady Rays is great because you know that they're going to look expensive and they're going to be very fashion forward, but they're not going to break the bank. I had no idea we had Shady Rays. I'm very excited about this.
Amazing. I was checking them out today after I saw that they were advertising tonight. The website's amazing, and they have an exclusive for our listeners, the Roughnecks. Shady Rays is giving out an amazing deal for the season. Go to shadyrays.com. It's right on the screen. If you are listening, shadyrays.com, and use code ROUGHNESS, not rough, roughness, for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. This isn't a small little company, guys. If you haven't heard of Shady Rays, you are missing out. So go there now. 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses if you use the code ROUGHNESS. Tell them we sent you. You know it. We love them.
It.
And if you love this podcast and you want some polarized shades, it helps us too. It shows that, so it's you're checking off so many boxes. Shout out Shady Rays. But yes, and
very exciting.
we're going to go to the ACC now, where there was a phenomenal game. Notre Dame and Duke. Now, obviously, Notre Dame is not in the ACC. They kind of are. They play, everyone else is in the ACC except for football, but they do play, I think, 4 ACC teams a year at least. And Duke really, it seemed like they were about to have their moment again.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sam Hartman went on a drive that I think, if this season continues on this way, Notre Dame fans are going to talk about for a while, because there was multiple times on that drive I thought the game was over. There was early, I think on 3rd down or 4th, where he found somebody over the middle. There's almost a moment he almost got sacked in the end zone early in the drive because Duke had an amazing punt. And then, man, the run that he had, because
Insane.
he obviously was in the pocket, rolled out, and you could see he was like, should I run it? Should I run it? And he was looking all around. He was like, I have to fucking run it. And he ran, and he said, I'm going to get in this first down, hell or high water. He gets it. And then they go spike the ball, and it's almost like they're kind of looking around, trying to get the play call. The play call comes in late. Sam Hartman's yelling at the sideline, give me it, give me it, give me it. And then it's just a handoff, and I'm like, why are they running? And then Audric Estime was in the end zone. Final score, 21-14. Riley Leonard played well. His ankle got rolled up on at the end of the game. Hopefully he's all right.
Yeah, I felt really bad for him.
Yeah, that was like the worst scenario of the way to end. But, I'm not saying it's impossible. If they won the game last week, that would have been Sam Hartman's Heisman moment. Now it's a little bit difficult because you're kind of, at 11-1, it may be different. But, man, that was just phenomenal by Sam Hartman and Notre Dame. Huge win. And I think if they lost that would have been really demoralizing for this team.
Super demoralizing. But I think too, it's the product of who they were playing, because we know that, Duke beating Clemson the way that they did to open the season, that was obviously a huge story. Duke's looked really good. But can you imagine if Sam Hartman did what he did tonight, and then Audric Estime did what he did tonight against Ohio State, and they would have won the game the way they did, or against USC, or against Clemson, or against like a name of a program that like we're used to seeing? Like, those are the Heisman moments. Now, that's not to discredit Duke, but I do feel like, and I mean, Katie, obviously I know how you feel about Duke. There's still that kind of thought process, and like watching Twitter throughout the game, it was like, wait, we're talking about Duke being good at football? Like, wait, what are we talking about? And so because Sam Hartman had that moment, it was gigantic, but it is kind of like there's a little bit of a knock because of who they were playing, which is not fair, but we'll see what happens. But if he continues to have those moments, I mean, losing to Ohio State, you're right, Jack, like the Heisman campaign's pretty much over, I think, just because of the other guys in the country. But what a run by him.
I also think Riley Leonard, I want him to be fully healthy, back and everything. I want to beat Duke's ass, but I also want every single asterisk out. And of course, if Riley Leonard's gone, I'm like, well, what if this? What if that? No. I hope he's okay. I want him to be good. It looked, at least he was like had some weight on it. Yeah, no, it was
so bad for him. Because he played his ass off. I mean, obviously it wasn't perfect, but
was it just me, or were there more than normal injuries today? I feel like we saw a lot of injuries, like serious game stoppage, carts coming out, maybe more than normal, or am I overthinking?
I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, you probably
travel. It's hard enough for me to figure out scores half the time.
Fair. There was Brew McCoy, I think you got Aubrey, I forget his last name, West Virginia, who got fully carted out. It's not good. Like, you want to see it sucks. It is a violent game. You always want people to be fully healthy. Even if it's your rival, you still want to be able to beat them in full force so you can shut up everyone and be like, well, but.
Right.
Starting to get nervous for October 11th. Leave it at that.
Clemson takes care of business at Syracuse. For UVA with another tough loss.
They're over.
Close.
They're just, it's sad.
That was so close. Boston College, if they had lost that, Casey's dying too. We're all gonna die.
I'm dying. My whole household has a cough right now. I mean, we're dying.
Jeff Hafley, if he lost that game, he would be out because I think that the BC and Virginia are the bottom of the ACC right now. That was a tough Sickos Committee game to watch.
Another team that's at the bottom of the ACC, who may be lower, Georgia Tech. They lost to Bowling Green at home, 38-27. Ugh.
Gross.
Ugh.
They were showing I don't remember what game it was during the halftime show. They like showed like a highlight from that game, and I was like, why? I mean, it was a fantastic catch. We're like, why are we?
Yeah, I
showing
think
this game?
there was a great catch, but I know what
Fantastic
you're
catch.
saying. I know what you're saying.
But I was like,
That's
all right,
one of the
great,
games that
good
you're
for
like,
that guy.
is this game
But-
really happening?
Right. Like, great for that receiver. That was an unbelievable catch, but this does not deserve my airtime.
Another incredibly disappointing season resides in Pennsylvania. Pitt loses to Virginia Tech 38-21. Yikes.
Can I go back? This is another reason I'm not excited about the Pitt win for moments like this.
Yep.
Yes, you're allowed to say that. That's fair.
Pitt's now lost to Cincinnati, West Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia Tech in 4 straight weeks. This is a disaster of a season for Pittsburgh.
Gross.
Absolute disaster. There's really not much to say.
Seat?
I don't think it's hot yet because he's but next year, like now he probably comes into next year with a warm seat.
It's like his seat's here, the fire just got turned on. His seat's not
Yeah, it was
yet, but it's like there's grumbling.
There's heat. There's heat around it.
Yeah, it's simmering.
Yes.
Now it hasn't been simmering almost ever for him, which is it's a little unsettling for him. He's kind of like, wait, what? So that's a good question, but I think he is Pitt, he's just like, he's a guy who should be there forever.
He reminds me a lot of Mike Gundy. For Pitt, like there's not really hype with those two schools preseason, but they always find a way, or maybe not these years, find a way to sneak into the title conversation. They're just sneaky good, not much hype excitement, but they're there. And then suddenly you see Oklahoma State and Pitt is just this year.
Pittsburgh will upset a team this year again.
100%.
They'll find a way to ruin a season because that's just what they do. I'm going to say they're going to give Florida State their best fucking game ever on November 4th. It's going to be tough, and I think that's a week before Florida State plays Miami. So Pitt's going to give Florida State their best punch on November 4th. Louisville takes down NC State. Louisville remains undefeated. They are a story now that we have to keep an eye on. They have Notre Dame next week at home. That's a big game, and yet Louisville, they've had a lot of close wins. This is their 3rd game of 5 that was decided within one touchdown or one score. But on the road, it felt like they couldn't really get anything going in the first half, but they still found a way to do it. Next week against Notre Dame is going to be really, really, really interesting. I mean, they beat Notre Dame.
I mean, well, that's
we have to start talking about Louisville seriously. I mean,
which is crazy. That's again, the fact that the SEC race is not the most intriguing race, especially because my team is in it. The ACC is an insane storyline right now. Like who's going to be there? Pac-12, obviously. The Texas-Oklahoma game for the Big 12. I mean, because I think Texas is so good and they killed Kansas today. And then the Big 10 with Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio, or Michigan and Ohio State, it feels like the SEC is kind of just like, all right, well, whatever. Like the other 4 conferences are more interesting, I feel like. Maybe that's just because I'm down on the SEC.
No. There was, I completely
if Louisville wins this, beats Notre Dame, I mean, then where do you put them in that conference?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Louisville, if they beat Notre Dame, they're kind of wait and see until probably that game against Miami. If they go into the Miami game undefeated and then beat Miami, then it's like, all right, their game against Florida State may be to get into the playoff. Like if Florida State loses, which would be insane, but and that we just recapped every conference. I do want to shout out one. Alabama just finished off Mississippi State. Good one for them. Alabama, they did what they had to do. Mississippi State's definitely in a tough spot. I mean, Brandon will talk about it. Jalen Milroe only had to throw the ball 12 times.
That's crazy.
And for 164 yards, and they just
you know what, Katie, we need a list of all the things that we need to re-ask Brandon on Monday. Like, is OU actually good? Yes.
Will Rogers is having, here's the thing. We know what he's going to say to that. We don't have to ask about Will Rogers. He's just going to say his coach died. And so there's
right. But the argument in the offseason was like, when we said this offense is going to change and Will Rogers.
He had the most mad he ever got at me.
Yeah. Because you said that he was going to have to be under center.
I said I was a little concerned with the new offense. And he said, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
And now Will Rogers hasn't thrown for, I think, over 200 yards all year.
It's not been good.
I'm not going to bring that up to him. But
now that you've said it on this, surely there will be people listening.
No, I just gave a little. That was almost.
Yeah.
I want somebody else to bring it up to him. But yes. So let's just get into the winners of the week. It's been a long day for specifically you. You've been in 3 states, I think, today, or 4.
Yeah, I started in Chicago, went to Lincoln, went back to Chicago, and now I'm in New York.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know if you flew into. Okay, now you're back in New York. All right, 3 states.
The PJ goes back to Chicago, and then I jump on a plane to come back to New York because whatever. But yes, it's crazy.
Winner of the week, Katie?
I think it's going to be Lane Kiffin. We talked, I think, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, what's his biggest win in his career? Didn't really have one, lost Bama. This has to be it. Like, it's also, this, in my opinion, is an upset. Make that argument what you will. He went out, high-scoring game, no offense anywhere to be found, but Lane Kiffin, I think, has something to point to and say, this is my signature win. And I'm going to say it here because I can't say it on Monday. Congratulations to Ole Miss.
No, you can say that on Monday. Write that down. Put that down on your list. Jack, who won the weekend?
I'm going to say Sam Hartman. He was up against it. It almost reminds me of a fighter that was almost knocked out. Last week, he got knocked out. He came back this week, and he almost got knocked out again. And he just somehow found a punch at the end and did what he had to do and had this iconic moment. So, Sam Hartman.
Yeah, both of those answers are great. I think that I'm going to just go Ole Miss as a whole, though, because, that there were multiple points of that game, especially down the stretch, where I was like, this is going to be a heartbreaker for them. And, LSU, they, like, you want to talk about somebody that lost the weekend, the fact that they're out of the playoff conversation in September. But I think Ole Miss fans have been waiting for this Lane Kiffin moment, waiting to see, like, this come to fruition. And regardless of how you feel about LSU, the fact that the SEC West is still pretty wide open, this was a huge win for them. Huge win. It was by far the most fun game to watch of the day. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there was a gazillion points, just craziness all over the board. And so when you win a game like that everyone is paying attention and you have to put together the drive that they did at the end of the game, like that, the whole country's paying attention. So I'm going to say Ole Miss.
All right. Losers of the week. I'll kick this one off. Has to be South Carolina and their fan base and Spencer Rattler and whatnot. They've had a lot of moments this year so far to try to take advantage of the moment, and they just haven't. They lose on the road this time by 3 touchdowns. Congrats on getting to some bowl game on December 26th. You guys have done it again. But Spencer Rattler, say something nice about Spencer Rattler.
I can't. He was my drug of choice for a while, I guess. I couldn't get off the Spencer Rattler train. So this one's kind of a weird one because they won the game. But I think what we saw, not that, it's a complete shocker, but what we saw from USC's defense today is terrifying for when they get into games with Oregon and games with Washington. And anytime you win, it doesn't matter. I don't care that they were 21-point favorites, like whatever you may say. It's the fact that you have the best quarterback in the country, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, who's throwing 6 touchdowns and looking ridiculous. Like Caleb Williams is so good, and that defense is putrid. And I don't know what Alex Grinch has on Lincoln Riley. I don't understand why he's still coaching the defense. I don't understand. And I like Lincoln Riley. I know I get made fun of a lot. Like I'm a Lincoln Riley girl, but how do you have one of the best players in college football we've seen in a long time and the offense that you do and your defense can't stop shit? I do not understand it. So they won the game and that's great. But now it's on tape of like, you think that Michael Penix Jr. is not going to be able to throw for 1,000,000 yards on them? Bo Nix. You go down the list of these Pac-12 quarterbacks that we've talked about all offseason and all season, like it's going to be ugly for USC's defense. And I don't know that they're going to fix it because he's not fixed it in Norman and he's not fixing it at USC.
Katie.
I was initially going to do Brian Kelly and LSU, but I think it's got to be TCU. Last year, they were in the national championship. Yes, there's a lot of people talking like, did their schedule? Did they need to be there? Yada, yada, yada. But the way that this year is starting off, I think it's all coming back to realization of like, that was a lightning in the bottle. That was not the new normal. All the coin flip games that went their way last year are coming back the other way. Like they just lost to West Virginia. Like that might become a good win down the road. But right now, like I know we're not supposed to feel bad for any fan base, but I think it's fully like realization, come back to reality time for TCU. Like just it's
Damn.
tough times.
Poor Dawson.
No, brutal times for TCU. I think that's a great loser of the week. My shit list of the week, I'll kick us off. James Franklin and Northwestern's backup quarterback. Northwestern was such a good fucking bet, man. I've had a disastrous start to my betting year of 2023 in college football. It's just been brutal, but and it's okay. Don't worry. I always gamble responsibly, but it's just, I bet to win, not to lose. And this quarterback, it's just, all right, the game's over. Just run out the clock, whatever. And he throws the ball to here's the thing. Even if you're a backup quarterback on a Power 5 team, third string, fourth string, and in high school, you were very good. There was a guy right in front of him, and he just didn't throw it to him. and he could have just thrown it away or whatnot, and he just threw it right to him. And then they return it, and what does James Franklin do? I'm like, all right, maybe let's just sit on the ball. The game's over anyways. It was 34 to 13 or something. James Franklin, first play, pass, touchdown. What? James, are you serious, dude? It was so frustrating. And so those are my two shit lists. And even as a big time Penn State supporter,
you're a James Franklin guy.
The leader of the Penn State bandwagon, even though Brandon likes to say he is. That was very disappointing. I felt betrayed.
It's down bad. Katie, what's your shit list?
My shit list, Casey kind of took a little bit, but early in the year when we were going most disrespected players, I said Drake May for being the greatest quarterback with the worst defense. I'm upgrading that. I think it's Caleb Williams is the most disrespected. So on my shit list is Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley, because that's his decision. It's like I had that thought halfway through the game. It was just like, you have such an amazing offense. Like, where was the thought process in the offseason? It was like, fuck it. Offseason, the offense is going to be so good. I can't. It's OJ Simpson of all people. I saw tweeting out, it was like, this offense is great, but because of the defense, the defense is going to keep us from winning a national championship. That offense is good enough to win a national championship. That defense is going to fuck them. Where
I'm going to tell you, on my bingo card, did not have you mentioning OJ Simpson at 1 a.m.
No, I'm not proud of myself, but that's the name that came to mind. I saw that. Good point. It's just and the same, where was a decision in the offseason to not make a change, to not do something? Maybe there was, and it's not coming through. this is something like there'll be a documentary or something in 10 years or whatever that'll tell us, but it's just mind-boggling. We're
Mind-boggling.
just wasting such a good offense. And
Mhm.
also, at what point are they risking the injury and the health of the players on the offense because they can't sit down on the bench long enough to rest and not hurt themselves just by per capita of always being on the field? I thought about that with Drake May. No, Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams deserves better. It's a fact. So I've been alluding to my shit list the whole show, but one of the coolest things that we get to do and that I get to do for this job is obviously travel to different college towns. And like, I never take that for granted. I'd never been to Lincoln. None of us had ever been there for a game. So it was awesome. And the crowd for our show today was epic. It was huge. I mean, it went back so far that we couldn't even see where it ended. And it was like underneath like buildings and all that. These people in Nebraska care so much about their team. They live and die for their team. And in the 90s, they were so good. I grew up next to a family full of Cornhusker fans, and watching the success that they got to have when we were all little kids, I was so jealous. This Nebraska football team is so fucking bad. And these fans show up every single year. Like, I don't know how many schools in the country that we could go to and have an 18-point dog who end up getting their doors blown off and have the amount of fans at the show that they did. They love it. And that atmosphere is not what it's cracked up to be. I don't know if it normally is better. I know it was hot. It was midday. But all I heard was like, oh, the tunnel walk is great. The gates closed. It's great. Will Compton's like, this is the best scene. And like, that's all you ever hear about Nebraska football. I cannot make this up. We're sitting at the game. When it happened, we all kind of like looked at each other, and Dave goes, well, that was just like a 1 out of 10. Like, that was it. That's what we're talking about. It was bizarre. It was quiet in there. And I don't think that's because of the fans. I think that it's because, I mean, obviously the fans aren't making noise because the team is so bad. Nebraska fans deserve better. They deserve to be back in relevancy. I don't even know if that's a word. I'm losing it. And that's my shit list. Because if Nebraska football can't give some of the best fans in the country a good product, what are we doing here? It was horrible. Like, it was one of those things where it was like, I don't blame these fans for being quiet. What do they have to be excited about? This is shit. It's actual shit. So that's my shit list. But thank you for everybody that came out to Lincoln because it was a fantastic crowd. We had fun.
Do you think they miss Bo Pelini?
Oh, I know they do. And
also, if you're watching, like the video, please. Thank you.
Yes, do what Katie says. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
For 1,000 of you, 1,100, 1,200 of you rocking with us live. We usually go live if you listen around midnight, 11 p.m. midnight Eastern Standard Time on Saturday nights. If you ever want to join us there. If not, obviously, you could just listen or watch after. It's the same experience. We'll be back Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, 6:30 Central.
Live. It is my promise to everyone that I will be putting Brandon Walker on a judge and jury type situation about Oklahoma because I have some things to ask him.
All right, that's perfect lead in to a huge Oklahoma-Texas game next Saturday. We'll be back Monday and obviously Wednesday to preview all the games. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you guys soon.
Monday.
Monday.